Hello friends, my name is Em, my pronouns are she, they, and I have a story to share with you because today is Easter Day and it is Trans Day of Visibility. 2 days in one. And as you can see, I am visible, so it makes sense that I share a story with you today. Not that I would have to be visible to share a story because I share stories through words and our combined imaginations, but I am visible and I am going to tell you a story. It's one of my favourite stories to tell, and I know what you're thinking. Em, you say that every time you share a story, because it's true. It'd be very silly for me to share stories I didn't like to share. But this story, of all the stories I tell, is one of my favourites. Maybe even the top 2 stories that I love to share. But enough about that. Let us get to the story. It goes like this. The laird was holding a ceilidh. Now, for those of us that don't speak Scots and Gaelic, what's a laird and what's a ceilidh? Well, a laird is a landowner, someone who's inherited a vast estate and lots of money, doesn't have a title like earl or countess or queen or monarch, but has a lot of money, has a lot of land, and is very important. While a ceilidh, well, that is a type of party. It's a party where you have to bring something. But it's not a bring a dish of food to share situation. It's not a bring a gift for the host or guest of honour situation. It's a bring some entertainment situation. Yes, at a ceilidh, you have to bring a new song played old or an old song played new, a riddle, a rhyme, a joke, an anecdote, a game, a dance, or a story. And the laird loved stories. Oh, he loved stories more than anything else in the world. It was also said that the laird had a bit of raven's knowledge about him, a bit of the art uncommon, the black arts, the bit of magic. But that was surely just one of the stories that the laird loved to tell so much and hear so much, and oh, he loved stories so much that on this particular occasion the laird announced whoever could tell the best story of the night would win a solid gold farthing. And that was a lot of money, more than a year's wages, I'd bargain. So everyone tried their darndest to tell the best story they could. Tall tales, short stories, local legends, anecdotes, accidents, jokes, riddles. Each and every person tried their very best to tell the best story that they could. Right around the hall, everyone tried their best until finally it got to Sandy. Now, Sandy looked after the cows on the laird's estate, and the cows were cared for very, very well. But other than knowing that the cows were cared for very, very well, no one knew much about Sandy. I mean, Sandy was tall, broad-shouldered, a bit scruffy, clothes needed repair. I mean, nice enough if you met him in the village, but, Sandy kept himself to himself, and everyone was quite okay with that. So, when it finally got around to the hall, the laird said, "Well, Sandy, what story have you got for us?" And Sandy turned to the laird and said, "Your Honour, I'm sorry, I don't have a story." "What? Of course you got a story. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's having their turn. What's your story, Sandy?" "I'm sorry, sir. I don't have a story." "Now, come on, Sandy. Everyone has to contribute. That's the rules. What are you going to tell?" "I'm sorry, sir," said Sandy. "I don't have a story." "Right," said the laird. "Sandy, either you are going to tell us a story or you can get out right now and clean my boat until it's as clean as the day I got it. That's it. Don't come back to that boat as clean as the day I've got it, or you've got a story." Well, Sandy stood up in the awkward silence and left the hall. "All right then, let's have a jig," said the laird, turning to the band, and they started up and everyone started to dance, trying to forget that very awkward, unfortunate episode. While the jig is going on, Sandy walks down the path from the hall all the way down to the dock and gets to work cleaning the laird's boat. Now, Sandy looked after cows, not boats, so Sandy didn't really know what to do, but tried as well as could. Cleaned the green sludge and slime, picked off the barnacles, and then Sandy picked up a bucket to bail the water out that got caught in the storm. And to do this, Sandy stepped into the boat. And then the boat moved. Now, I don't mean the boat drifted a bit away from the pier. I don't mean it rocked a bit unsteady-like. I mean as if possessed, the boat started to travel further and further away from the pier, faster and faster towards the horizon. "Help!" Sandy called. "Help! Somebody help me! I can't swim! I've never been in water before! Somebody help!" Sandy screamed to high heaven and low hell, but no one could hear Sandy, and the boat kept travelling faster and faster and faster, and Sandy screamed louder and louder and louder until Sandy's voice was hoarse, and Sandy collapsed in a heap in the boat and fell into a dead sleep. When Sandy woke up, the boat was still travelling faster and faster towards the horizon. The sky was clear and there wasn't sight of land anywhere. Sandy knew couldn't stay in the boat forever, so leaned over the edge, hoping to see maybe the water was shallow enough that you could jump out. But as Sandy leaned over the edge, there was something strange in the reflection in the sea. Previously, Sandy had short, messy hair and scruff, unshaven face. But now Sandy's hair was long, and face was smooth. And the tough work jerkin and patched again pants and trousers had been replaced by a beautiful dress. Silk, maybe? And those leather boots that had far too many holes in them, desperate need of repair, replaced with the finest of satin slippers. And as Sandy stood up, Sandy realized she was a woman. And then the boat stopped. Completely out of nowhere, there was now an island, and the boat had run amok into its beach on its shore. And Sandy stepped out of the boat and, very confused, walked onto the island, deeper to the island, and eventually came across a man who asked this mysterious woman where she had come from and where she was going, and Sandy couldn't really reply. She didn't know how she got here, she didn't know where she was going, she didn't know where to return to. Well, the man didn't know what much to do, so he took this mysterious woman into the village, and it was a small community, and they all gathered around and started talking and muttering and pointing and thinking about what to do with this strange woman who had appeared out of nowhere, doesn't know where she's come from, doesn't know where she's going, doesn't know how she got here in the first place. And they all decided the only thing they could do was welcome her into their community. "Well," said one of the village elders, "what can you do?" Well, said Sandy, I can look after cows." And so Sandy was put in charge of caring for the herd of cows. And I must say that herd of cows had never had greater love and care than when they were under Sandy's care. And before long, Sandy wasn't just in charge of the cows. Oh, no, she was in charge of the sheep and the goats and the pigs and the hens and the geese and any other animal that happened to come her way. And they were very happy animals. And after a while, when Sandy was well and truly integrated in that close-knit community, she fell in love and married the man, the first man she'd met on her first day on the island. And they got married in the little stone chapel on the isle. And a while after that, Sandy and her husband had 3 boisterous, bouncing boys. They were more than a handful, I should admit, but Sandy loved them with such deep care and affection. She loved her husband with such deep care, and she loved her community. She loved her new life. Oh, so much. All was right with the world. Well, a long time passes, and Sandy one day is walking along the shore with her husband and her 3 bouncing boys. The boys are running between wave and wood, and her husband is following behind them to make sure no one gets too wet or scrapes too many knees. And Sandy's just walking on, sun on her face. And suddenly she sees something just ahead of her. She goes a bit closer and she sees it's the boat. That same boat that had brought her here all those years ago. It's now turned over and a bit damaged, but she's overwhelmed. This boat has brought her so much joy. Maybe, she thinks, maybe I can fix it up. I can take it into the village, and the kids, my boys and the other kids in the village can play on it, or I can use it to tell the strange and unexpected story of how I came here. So Sandy turns over the boat and steps inside to see how bad the damage is. And then the tide comes in. And the boat goes out. And Sandy screams louder than she's ever screamed before. Help! Help! Somebody! Help me! She screams to high Levin and low Hell and her husband. He hears her screams, but he's busy trying to make sure the boys don't climb up the trees too high, and so he runs, but he can't run as fast as that boat can move, as if possessed, further and further away from the island, further and further towards the horizon. Sandy screams and screams, and her husband screams and screams back, and finally Sandy cannot see them anymore. The island is but a speck in the distance, and her voice is so hoarse, and she collapses in a heap into the boat and falls into a dead sleep. Suddenly Sandy wakes up. It's night. The water is still, and the boat isn't moving. In fact, it's in the dock. And in the distance, Sandy can hear a Kaylee. No, not a Kaylee. The Kaylee. And as Sandy steps up and looks in the still water, the reflection, everything's gone. Sandy walks back up the path towards the hall, a cloud of confusion hanging over. When finally Sandy steps through the front doors of the hall, the laird says, "Well, Sandy, either you have a story of my boat was clean as the day it was got." And barely above a whisper, Sandy told the story of everything that I have told you thus far. And when Sandy got right to the point that I'm at right now, the laird said, "Well, Sandy, if that isn't the best story we've heard all night," he said, "told with such truth, such honesty, and yet so unlikely and so funny too. Without a doubt, that is the best story of the night. Here." And Sandy is given the solid gold farthing. "All right, let's have another dance," says the laird, and the Kaylee continues, and everyone gets back up again, and Sandy leaves the hall. Doesn't join in the jig, doesn't join in the party, walks back down the path towards the dock, that cloud of confusion still hanging over, and then finally Sandy steps into the boat. And it just rocks a bit, drifts a little from the pier, but doesn't move. Not really. Sandy looks at the solid gold farthing, prize. Oh, it has so much monetary worth. This is a lot more than a year's wages. But then Sandy thinks about community, the children, husband, the life that has been snatched away, and how much value that has. And so Sandy takes that coin and flings it far into the sea, and it lands with a plop into its depths. And the ripples spread out on the still water until finally they touch the boat. And the boat, it begins to move. As if possessed, that boat travels further and further away from the pier, further from the hall, away from the lair, the Kaylee, and faster towards the horizon. And this time, Sandy doesn't scream to high heaven and low hell. Sandy doesn't cry until eyes are dry. Sandy stands proud and tall as the boat travels faster and faster towards the rising sun. And Sandy beams, knowing of all the life that awaited her. And that is Sandy's story. I'll be honest, the story's not just from Scotland. There are lots of different versions of this story from Ireland and England and Scandinavia. And I'll be honest, the ending, between when Sandy gets the prize of that gold coin up to the end, that's not necessarily traditional. Most people don't do that, because most people haven't thought of that. But stories change, right? They're not crystallized. They move and change. With every teller and every story listener, stories change. And more often than not, I think it's good. They get better and better. But sometimes that isn't true, and someone isn't visible, cannot have the new life that they want. Stories aren't fully developed, or they have to leave bits out, or someone else doesn't hear the bits that are missing. Anyway, there is Sandy's story as I tell it, and I hope you will tell a version of that story, for it is a good story. The story of someone who doesn't have a story, at least not yet. Anyway, go well, be brave, be gentle, be loving, and I'll see you in the soup.